So I hope you guys see my screen. So let's begin with today's talk. And first of all, thanks Saparian and thanks to the GD Yaounde for giving me a chance to speak at your event. So today's talk is about splash screen. It's a new API introduced in Android 12. Before going to the details and how it works, a little bit about myself. My name is Nav Singh, and I'm from Montreal, Canada. I'm GDE for Android and working as a software engineer at Manulife. And apart from that, I love to write articles about Android and Kotlin. Starting with the Android like splash screen API, like how it actually works is like we will go later into details. So whenever you might have seen like a lot of applications, like whenever you open application, it shows some kind of blank screen with just a loading indicator, or like there is no any standard library before that. So what it does is like every application based on their requirements from their business side, if they want to show some kind of startup animation or like any screen before actually they feel that it's their application is ready, that is called a splash screen. So like why Google actually introduced this new API. So the challenges with the UX, like with the user experience. So if you are if you have, or right now if you have Android phone, and you can check like if you have 10, even 5 applications, they all have a different user experience when you open them, like with their custom splash screen. So they have implemented something like based on their requirements. So to provide a better consistent user experience to all the users for Android, Google introduced this new API. What it does is like now every application, whenever it opens like first time, which is like a hot start, so it will show the default splash screen, which is integrated within the Android OS, and it cannot be changed. It cannot be avoided. So in this talk, I will cover the basics of this API, and there is a guide. I have a link in the references. What it does is like there is a migration guide if you like to support this API into the older versions, for example, Android 11, 10, or like even older than that. So today we will just cover the basics of this API. So as I told you, Android 12 adds this splash screen APIs. It's a new law. It enables a new app launch animation for all applications, and it includes a into app motion at launch screen, which is showing your application icon with the, and then transitioning from that splash screen the to your app itself. So if you already have the custom splash screen and you started targeting Android 12, then you might need to before figure out the things like how you're gonna support this splash screen and remove your existing one. Otherwise, you will have a really bad experience for your users, because then they will see ultimately 2 splash screens, which is might be annoying at some point. So like there is a challenge to support the older versions. So this is a recommendation that you should use the splash screen compact library. It provides the support for older versions, and also there is a very like detailed migration guide is also available on the Android developers documentation that you can follow. That was a little bit about the API. So we will see how it actually works. So it uses the theme and animations, and from the themes or theme of your application, you can define certain properties when you're targeting 12, and then for the older versions there are other properties that you can um, use, like for example window background, when that's the color that you want to define to what color to show for the splash screen window. Application is ready, the splash screens will be automatically dismissed. So this is basically when the first frame of your application get drawn on the screen. the splash screen goes away. So if you have something, I will cover later, like if there is something you want customization, in that cases you need to make sure that you dismiss the splash screen. Otherwise, if you're just using the standard splash screen, then you don't need to dismiss everything. It's just like on the first, whenever there is a first draw call to the application, then it will go away. Never shown during hot start. So what that means is like when user presses the home icon and application goes to the background, then they again open it, it will not shown. So it will be only shown during the cold starts, like very first time when it's start. Basically has a major four icons. Ultimately, there is one another one. We will cover that later. But these are the major four components, I can say. So the first one is the application icon. If you see on the right side, there I have an image that is from the Gmail splash screen. So the first one is the email, like their icon. The second one is the icon background. Third is the foreground, and fourth is window background. And all these properties you can define in your application. These properties can be customizable also. Like if you don't want to show your application icon, you can provide a different icon using the theme properties. We will cover those later. But these are the four things that are the main components that you can also customize. Or if you don't customize, it will take the default properties from your theme. Like if you don't provide any icon, it will take the app icon. And if you don't provide the window background, it will take the default window background color. From those components, it's a splash screen animation. It also consists of two animations. The first one is the enter animation. It consists of system view to the splash screen. So when splash screen shows up, there is a enter animation, and it's totally controlled by a system. We can just customize it. There is no any possibility at this point that we can customize the enter animation. One is the exit animation, like when splash screen goes away from the screen. We can customize this one. There is a option, and we will see later in the coming slides how we can customize that. So basically, it has two animations, and one can be customizable, and one is just the default system one. Like how we can customize the splash screen, and as I told you, like it uses the window background of your theme. So it's it's a single color and the launcher icon. So you can define those two, like you can use, these are the default things that splash screen is using, but there are options that for how we can customize the different properties. So as I told you already, like setting the theme attributes, we can attributes to its to change the appearance. So with the help of the theme attributes, like we will cover in the next slide. And then if we want to keep this appears on screen, like splash screen, we want to stay for a longer period, then there is also a way how we can do that. And then the customizing the animation that I told you, like we have an animation, we can customize the exit animation. So these are the three proper, like possible ways that you can customize the splash screen. One is like changing the background color. So there is a new property introduced in Android 12, which is called Windows Splash Screen Background. And you can add this property to your application's theme, which is like probably in styles. And then you can provide any color that you want to show for your window background color for your splash screen. And this is only for version 12 or higher. For the lower versions, you can check the migration guide. That I'm going to cover next, they are only available for Android 12. Is like replacing an icon. So as I told you, by default, it uses the application icon, like your logo. Maybe your applications are basically the icon that you have defined in the manifest file for your application tag. So if you want to show something different for the application icon, there is a property called Windows Splash Screen Animated Icon. And as the name says, like it's an animated icon. So you can also provide an animated icon. Like if you want to do something like animation on the icon, you can also provide that. And that animation's default duration is 1000, it's max 1000 milliseconds, but you can try, like you can change it to we will see how in the next slides. What I'm talking about, the animation duration. So property is called Windows splash screen animation duration. The 1000 is the maximum, and Android 12 is the recommendation by the Android documentation, or I can say the team, that try to finish your animations within 0 to 1000, and it will be like behaving as expected. But if your animations are complex and maybe running longer than this time, it might be get clipped, and it might be leads to the bad user experience. Change the icon's background color. Then the property is called Windows splash screen icon background color, and we pass the color to that property, this property, and it will be like you will see whatever you have defined here when your application opens in your splash screen. Component that is not covered in the first slide when I said like 4 major components. Windows splash screen branding image. So you might have seen, like whenever you open, like if you're using Facebook or any application, you see at the bottom like a little logo of Facebook, like by Facebook or powered by something like that. So to provide that kind of experience, there is a property called a Windows splash screen branding image, and you can provide your drawable reference. And now what this does is like, now it will your app splash screen will contain two things. The first thing is the application icon, which is going to be in the center of your splash screen, and then at the bottom, this branding image will be shown at the bottom of your splash screen, like very bottom, at like just at the bottom of your screen. The next thing is like keeping the splash screens on screen for longer periods. So by default, this duration is 1000 for even for sorry, that is for animations. But by default, as I told you, like as soon as your application hits the first pre-draw, like draw call, like to draw the frame, the splash screen goes away. But in some cases, if we are already working with Android applications, that's not the case. We want to dismiss the splash screen. Like maybe we are loading some information from APIs, or maybe if we want to like loading some preferences or setting some themings based on the user's settings. Maybe you have saved some data and shared preferences, or maybe you want to read some files before actually showing the content of your application. So you can also keep the splash screen on screen for longer period. And with the help of the view tree observers on PreDrawListener, we can help or suspend the application app to draw its first frame. Sample how you can add the PreDrawListener to the application of your app in your application, and then it has one method which is called on predraw, and it returns Boolean. The code is written in Kotlin. So if you see, I have created a view which is say find view by ID android.id.content. So whenever id.content, it's not defined in our application. It's basically the default. It's from the Android resources. If you see, resources are started here with the Android package, android.r. So on that content, I called view tree observer and added the PreDrawListener. So on predraw, what do you need to do is like you need to do your stuff and return true when you feel like you are okay, and now it's time to move to your application's content, and splash screen goes away. So here I'm just added a sample, like maybe I can say just a flag. So I said like return if view model dot is ready. So is ready is something like, maybe it might be, in your case, it might be your API call, it might be your loading, or maybe you are using some kind of live data, and you can just observe it here, and when it's true, then when it's done, you can just return true. And if you see here, like when you return true, you need to remove this PreDrawListener call, and that's it. So once you are done, This will help you to like suspend the pre-draw call, and your splash screen stays longer than you like as you want, then default, or like before actually when it hits the pre-draw call. So here basically we are not playing with splash screen. Here we are just delaying the drawing call, like frame drawing of our application. So we just staying on screen, like we want to like we just trigger the call to the system like, hey, show splash screen until I am ready. So this is that kind of behavior, how you can achieve that. Property is customizing the exit animation. So as if you want to stay longer on that screen, there might be a possibility that your designers, or like if you are just working as a freelancer, you want to do some cool things with when splash screen goes away, like you want to write some custom animation. So there is also a new way, like there is a way how we can do that. And in activity, now we get a new method which is called get splash screen. And on that, you can just customize the and exit animation. So again, the code is written in Kotlin. So what I'm doing is here is, as you know, like in Kotlin, we don't explicitly say get splash screen or set something. Like getter setters are easily accessible without like adding set or get. So here in the activity, this is a code to say splash screen. Like this is basically get splash screen in your activity. So I added the listener on it. If you see set on exit animation listener, so it will provide access to the splash screen view. And then I created a custom animation here, which is with the help of the object animator. Then I set the interpolator and then the duration. If you see the duration here, I just set it to 200 just to finish it as ASAP. Or like you can also set it to 1000 or 800 or whatever duration you want based on your animations. But as I told you earlier, like this should not be more than 1000. That's the max duration for these animations. Once you have defined your animations, the next thing is, which is really important in this case, is like removing the splash screen view. So as I told before, like when you want to customize the exit animation, you need to make sure that you remove the splash screen view once your animation is finished. So the next call here is if you see here, it says slide up dot do on end. So what it does is like it's basically kind of a callback on the animation. So once that animation is finished, we just want to remove the splash screen from the application, from the view, and our application content will be visible to the user. So at the end, you just need to call slide up and dot start, which is here. Slide up is animation, and this is basically I can say one. This is basically 3 or 4 steps. If you want to customize the animation, you need to set the animation listener, exit animation listener. Then you need to create your custom animation and set the duration, interpolator, whatever properties you want to set on that animation. And then you need to make sure that you added the do on end call. Otherwise, your splash screen will not go away automatically once your animation finished. And the last is you need to call that animation and you are good to go. Basics of like overall idea of how splash screen works and how you can customize the different properties of it. Here I have added a couple of article links or references for you guys. The first one is that I have written an article about it. And the next one is from Android team again. The third one is like really important because that's the migration guide if you want to support for older versions. And last one is the code that I have discussed in these slides, that the full sample code is available in that repository. You can check that because it's public on GitHub. So feel free to check it. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop in chat.